He was born where silence wears a crown, in halls of stone and whispered destiny. Gold framed the windows, yet his nights were bare, for royalty never shields the heart from ache. They called him Prince, but patience was his truest inheritance. Faith was his unseen sword, forged not of steel, but of whispered prayers at dawn. He learned early that crowns are heavy, not because of jewels, but because of expectations. Every smile he offered the world hid 1,000 unasked questions. The palace echoed with applause, yet his heart searched for one honest voice. Servants bowed, ministers praised, but solitude followed him like a shadow that knew his name. He watched the desert from high balconies, how it endured the sun without complaint. From sand he learned patience, from stars he learned faith. Nights taught him that darkness is not the enemy, only a test of how deeply one trusts the morning. He lost what he loved, not once, but many times. Some losses walked away, others were taken by fate, and some simply faded. Without goodbye, pain visited him often, sat beside him like an uninvited guest. Yet he never chased it away, for pain, he knew, is a teacher dressed in sorrow. When his heart cracked, he did not curse the heavens. He lifted his eyes and whispered, "If this is written, give me strength to read it with grace." Patience became his language. While others demanded answers, he learned to wait. While others broke, he bent and rose again. Faith grew quietly within him, like a lamp lit in a storm. It did not remove the wind, but it kept the flame alive. He walked through betrayal, with dignity intact. He faced injustice, without poisoning his soul. He learned that revenge is loud, but faith is enduring. Some nights he cried alone, tears soaking royal pillows, but by dawn, he wore courage like armor, not for display, but for survival. The world mistook his silence for weakness. They never knew how much strength it takes to remain kind. When wounded, he loved deeply, though love hurt him. He trusted, though trust betrayed him, for he believed that a heart closed by fear is poorer than a heart broken by truth. Time tested him relentlessly. Each year carved lines, not on his face, but in his wisdom. He became older, yet gentler. He prayed not for ease, but for endurance, not for shortcuts, but for clarity, not for crowns, but for peace. When storms rose against him, he stood still. Patience anchored his feet. Faith lifted his gaze beyond the waves. He understood then that destiny does not rush. It arrives when the soul is ready to carry it. People saw the throne, but not the journey. They envied the crown, not the weight it carried. Only the prince knew how many times he almost gave up, yet he didn't, because faith whispered, "Hold on," and patience replied, "I will." In time, his wounds became wisdom. His scars turned into stories that healed others. His silence spoke louder than speeches ever could. He ruled not by fear, but by understanding, not by force, but by example. His strength lay not in power, but in restraint. And so the prince walked on, not perfect, not unbroken, but unwavering, carrying patience in his breath, faith in his heart, and hope in his quiet steps. For he knew true royalty is not inherited, it is earned through patience, through faith, through choosing light. Even when surrounded by night, he learned to speak with the sky. When no one else would listen, his prayers were not loud. They were steady, like footsteps on a long road. The wind carried his secrets. The moon guarded his tears. He trusted the night, because it never pretended to be light. There were days when his heart grew tired of waiting, when patience felt like punishment, and faith felt far away. Still he stayed. Still he believed. He watched others rise quickly, burn brightly, and fall just as fast. He chose the slower path, where roots grow deeper than applause. The throne remained empty at times, not because he was absent, but because he was learning how not to lose himself to it. He carried love carefully, as one carries water across the desert, not spilling it on anger, not wasting it on pride. Some loved him for his title, some feared him for his power, but a few loved him for his silence, for the way it made space, for truth. Betrayal knocked again, wearing the face of loyalty. It wounded him, but did not harden him. He stitched his heart with forgiveness. He learned that patience is not waiting with empty hands, but working quietly while trusting the unseen. Faith taught him to bow without breaking, to hope without guarantees, to walk forward, even when the path dissolved into fog. He stood between past and promise, neither clinging nor running. He honored what was lost, without living there. Loneliness became a companion, not an enemy. It taught him self-respect and the strength of inner company. When his name was praised, he remained humble. When his name was dragged, he remained whole. He understood that identity, built on opinions, will collapse in silence. Time bent before him, not because he controlled it, but because he respected its lessons. He forgave himself last, and that took the longest. For a prince can endure the world, yet struggle to pardon his own heart. When doubt crept in, he did not panic. He sat with it, listened, and let faith answer. In its own hour, he began to see blessings, hidden inside delays, mercy disguised as denial, and protection masked as loss. The crown no longer tempted him. He had discovered something rarer, peace that does not depend on outcomes. And when the time finally came, when destiny knocked softly, found him ready, not because he was strong, but because he was surrendered. He stepped forward, not chasing glory, not escaping pain, but carrying both, with grace. Thus the prince became more than a ruler. He became a refuge, a reminder that patience is strength restrained, and faith is courage whispered into the dark. The world may forget his victories, but it will remember how he endured. And somewhere, in a quiet heart reading this, the prince still lives, teaching patience, guarding faith, and proving that waiting is sometimes the bravest act of all. Dawn returned again, soft as forgiveness. The prince stood at the window, watching light touch the world. Without asking permission, he realized then that patience is light's nature. It arrives every day, no matter how long the night argues. He stepped into the day, carrying yesterday gently, not dragging it like a chain. Faith had taught him that memory should guide, not imprison. Voices surrounded him, advice, criticism, praise, all pulling at his will. He listened, then chose silence, where truth speaks without echo. He ruled moments before he ruled lands. He mastered reactions before commands. For power without patience, he knew, is chaos wearing authority. Children in the streets did not fear his presence. They smiled, for kindness had preceded him. This, he thought, is the only legacy worth keeping. Once, anger knocked hard at his chest. It begged to be released, to burn bridges and call it justice. The prince breathed slowly, and anger melted into wisdom. Faith reminded him, not every battle is meant to be won. Some are meant to be outgrown. He faced moments of deep injustice, where truth stood alone. Still, he did not trade his soul for quick relief. He chose the longer road that leads home within. Many mistook his calm for indifference. They never saw the storms he quieted inside his ribs. He learned to trust delay, to see divine timing where others saw neglect. Every unanswered prayer refined his asking. The prince began to smile, not because life softened, but because he had. He understood now. Faith is not believing everything will be easy, but trusting that nothing is wasted. Even failure bowed before him, for he treated it as instruction, not as identity. When love returned to his life, came gently, recognizing the scars, honoring the waiting. He loved without possession, without fear of loss, for faith had taught him that what is written will not pass him by. Night fell again, and he welcomed it. Stars reminded him how vast patience can be, how small worries appear. From eternity's view, he knelt not as a king, but as a servant of hope. His prayer was simple: keep my heart clean, while my hands do their work. The world changed slowly, but he did not rush it. He changed first, and the rest followed. And so his story continued, not in loud chapters, but in faithful repetition. Waiting, trusting, becoming. The prince walked on, leaving behind no fear, only footsteps of calm, for others to follow. Seasons turned as pages turn, quietly without applause. The prince aged not in years, but in understanding. He learned that time does not heal by itself, teaches, and healing is a choice, made every day. He met people who mirrored his old wounds. Instead of bitterness, he offered mercy. In doing so, he healed twice, them and himself. Responsibility pressed heavier now. Decisions shaped lives, far beyond palace walls. He trembled sometimes, not from fear, but from the weight of consequence. Faith steadied his hands. Patience slowed his breath. Between them, he found balance. He refused shortcuts. He declined comfort that cost conscience. The prince knew ease purchased with integrity is the most expensive loss. There were nights he missed being unknown, when duty felt like exile. Yet even then, he did not abandon his calling. He learned to carry grief without announcing it, to celebrate quietly, to endure publicly, without becoming distant. When people failed him, he did not generalize pain. He separated actions from souls, mistakes from identities. He spoke less, and when he did, words landed with purpose. Silence had trained his voice. He learned that faith is not constant certainty, but constant return. Returning to hope, returning to prayer, returning to self. Once the kingdom faced collapse. Fear spread faster than fire. The prince stood calm. Amid the chaos, his stillness became the people's anchor. He addressed them not with promises, but with truth. Not with force, but with example. They followed, because they trusted. The patience in his eyes, and the faith in his steps. Loss visited again. Someone dear was taken. Grief cut deep, but did not hollow him. He mourned fully, then rose slowly. Faith did not erase sorrow. It gave sorrow meaning. He honored pain, without letting it rule. He wept without shame. He healed without haste. As years passed, stories grew around him. Some exaggerated, some misunderstood. He let them exist, for truth does not need defense. When lived consistently, children born under his reign learned patience by watching him wait, faith by seeing him trust. He smiled at that. Leadership had become lesson. The prince knew now, legacy is not what you leave behind, but what you leave within others. And so he continued, walking gently through power, holding firmly to humility, wearing patience like breath, faith like heartbeat. The night still tested him. The world still demanded. But he remained, steady, surrendered, awake. There came a time when even patience felt thin, when waiting stretched longer than hope could comfortably bear. The prince did not flee these moments. He sat with them, as one sits beside an old fire, trusting warmth would return. He discovered that faith sometimes walks ahead, sometimes follows behind, but never truly leaves. It waits quietly until the heart is ready again. The kingdom faced whispers, doubt disguised as wisdom, fear masked as advice. He listened carefully, then returned to the quiet place, inside himself, where truth never raises its voice. He learned that leadership is often lonely, not because people abandon you, but because decisions must be made alone. Still, he chose responsibility over popularity, principles over praise. Patience held his spine straight. Faith kept his eyes lifted. When anger rose among the people, he answered with understanding. When blame pointed at him, he answered with accountability. He knew humility disarms more enemies than power ever could. There were days he wished for simplicity, a life without symbols, without crowns, without expectations pressing into sleep. Yet he accepted his path with open hands, not clenched fists. The prince began to see that patience is not passive. It is active restraint, strength choosing wisdom over impulse. Faith too transformed, no longer just hope for tomorrow, but trust in today, even when today felt unfinished. He mentored quietly, never forcing lessons. He allowed people to grow at their own pace, remembering how long his own growth had taken. Mistakes still found him. He welcomed correction without defensiveness. For a heart that resists learning ages faster than time. He stood before mirrors and recognized himself, not the boy he once was, not the legend others created, but the man refined by waiting. The crown no longer glittered. It rested. So did he. In prayer, he no longer asked for signs. He had learned to read silence, to trust stillness as guidance. When the final great test arrived, it did not come as disaster, but as choice. A choice between control and surrender, between speed and depth. The prince chose slowly. He chose rightly. Faith exhaled. Patience smiled. And in that moment, nothing dramatic happened, yet everything changed. He understood then. The journey was the reward. The waiting was the becoming. The prince walked forward, no longer proving anything, no longer resisting anything. He simply lived, aligned, awake, whole. And though history would remember his reign, the truest victory remained unseen. A heart that stayed gentle in a world that tried to harden it. So the story continues, as all true stories do, inside every soul. Learning to wait, learning to trust, learning to believe that patience and faith are not delays, but divine directions.